Good morning, everybody. How are we this bright and fine Tuesday? My name is Ali Board, and I am bringing you Technique Tuesday as part of a whole series of events that I do throughout the year. Now, you might be watching live via the Learning to Paint with Alison Seaboard Facebook page. You might be watching via YouTube, or you might be watching via my blog over on the Learning to Paint website. No matter how you are accessing this demonstration this morning, thank you very much for taking the time and trouble to tune in. It's lovely, really lovely to have you with me. Today is going to be kind of wrapping up a project, but I have some information to give you first, if that's okay, just because it's nice to get all the news out of the way at the start, and then we can concentrate on who's in the room and what it is that we're going to be doing today. So just in case you weren't aware, and I'm sure you all are, but just in case you weren't aware, I have Dorset Art Weeks coming up. It starts on the 14th of May. You'd think I'd remember that date, but I've got so many dates floating around in my head at the moment. It starts on the 14th of May, and what effectively it is over 300 artists, quite a few more than that. I was having a look at the map earlier, and I'll show you that in just a second. We throw open the doors of our studios. We invite the general public in to show you our latest collection of work, or to talk about what it is that we do. Obviously, as far as I'm concerned, I'll be selling my work, I'll be selling prints, we've got new images for you, we've got some collaborative work with my mum, slightly different than what you might be expecting. But I am very well aware that there's lots of you out there who live very far away from Dorset and don't have a hope of being able to get here, which is a shame because it would be nice to see you in person, but that doesn't mean you have to miss out. So I will be broadcasting the whole event virtually, but not in the place that you might think. That is over on the sister website. So I have two websites. I have www.learningtopaint.co.uk. That's where you find all of the stuff about my tuition and the classes and all of those kind of things, and the home of Technique Tuesday, obviously. And then we have alisonseaboard.co.uk, and that is me as an artist, and that's where Plan B happens, all of those kind of things. So most of the stuff to do with Dorset Art Weeks is going to be over there. But do you know what? To make it a whole heap easier, what we do is on both pages we put links to all the places that you can find it. There's a calendar of events that went up yesterday, so you should be able to find everything okay. You are going to hear a lot more about that, I promise you. But the other bit of news, so let me show you that first. So here is the studio, just in case you can make it in person. We're going to be opening the doors to Down End Farm Studio. So I'm venue number 63. I'll show you that in just a second. It's very easy to find me. You've only got to Google me or grab yourself a Dorset Art Week brochure. But you can take part online from Tuesday the 10th of May. Now, something very special is happening on Tuesday the 10th of May, but I have bigger information to give you than that. This is the last Technique Tuesday until the 3rd of May. Now, from the 3rd of May, Technique Tuesday is actually going to be moving just an hour to 9 o'clock in the morning, simply because our lives have changed a little bit, mine included. And it means that during Dorset Art Weeks, I've got to broadcast at 9 o'clock anyway for the regular Technique Tuesday slot, because I open at 10 and I didn't really want people banging on the door whilst I was broadcasting. So it's going to change to 9 o'clock, and then it's going to stay at 9 o'clock, which I know for some of you who are not in the UK means that you've either got to get up a little bit earlier, or perhaps it's easier for you. I know that those of you who tune in for Australia are thinking, oh goodness, thank goodness for that, I'm going to stay up so late. So that is just to tell you that from the 3rd of May, which is the next Technique Tuesday back, it will be at 9 o'clock. But don't worry, I will remind you. Now, if you are tuning in live via Facebook, it's always nice for me to give you a shout out. So let's see who's in the room, shall we? Martina gets the award of the day for the first person to comment. Good morning. And she's saying it's raining where she is. Yeah, it's chucking it down in Dorset too. But my garden needs it. You know, I can't have Plan B where I'm out in the sunshine all day long. All the plants wouldn't last. Jane in the Isle of Man is saying that it's cloudy. Good morning, Rabina. Lovely to have you here. Maureen, D, think it's raining where D is as well in Wales. Do you need to do something about that weather before I go on my holidays next week? Jane, good morning. Joe, just down the road from me, is saying good morning too. Now, Sandy's got sun in Norfolk. How lovely. Don't you love the weather forecast that I give in the mornings? Joe, good morning. Rosie. Oh, Rosie has finally succumbed to COVID. I am so sorry to hear that, Rosie. And yes, take yourself away, hide under a duvet and look after yourself, my lovely. Ali D is saying that it's pouring. Anita, good morning. Joe, good morning. Mick is saying, finally made it. Good morning to Ali and all others on this site. Oh, and he's had cracked ribs as well. Well, I hope you're better, Mick. And lots of people wishing each other well, which is the whole point of these broadcasts, isn't it? To bring the community together. Right, let's take you to the overhead camera and let's just give you a bit more information about Dorset Art Weeks, and then we'll crack on with what it is that we're going to be doing today. So here we go. So this is, if you're visiting in person, this is the brochure that you need to look out for. Isn't it beautiful? Really beautiful this year. Nice big size as well. This is A4 kind of size. So it's going to be nice to kind of flick through. Here we go. Here is the map of Dorset. Look at all those spots. Look at them all. Amazing. Look at all those places that are going to be open during Dorset Art Weeks. Isn't that fantastic? Right from right up the top near Gillingham to all the way down the bottom at Portland, and all the way over here at Lyme Regis, all the way over to Christchurch. You look at that. Dorset is a diamond shape county, and you can see it there in the dots. Now if we go close up, I mean, this is a good use of close-up cam, isn't it? Look at that. Number 63. That's me, just out ever so slightly on a limb. But look at all those lovely artists that you could visit while you were with me. Blandford is the closest town. And then if you're wondering why there's kind of nothing over here, can you see here it says Cranbourne Chase? This is an area of outstanding natural beauty, and my house is right on the edge of it. We have beautiful views, and you'd be very welcome to come and see them. But plenty of other things for you to have a look at whilst you're in the area. And let's just very quickly show you. Look, there I am, venue 63. Little old me and little old Rufus on the page, looking towards everybody else, and lots of the artists who are around me. But doesn't that look fantastic? I'm so excited for this event. It's really rare for it to happen 2 years in a row. So I'm taking full advantage of taking part in it. I think this is possibly my 20th year of taking part in Dorset Art Weeks, but that just makes me sound old, so we'll skim over that. Right, where's our beautiful dodgy Robin? So if you've been following this project along, you will know that we have been experimenting with some dry point printmaking, which is really hard to say. And this is the plate that we ran last week. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, do go and watch it, for no other reason to watch me running around trying to sort the technology out, because it was quite funny last week. I watched it back, which I don't really do, but honestly, talk about running around like headless chicken. So we ran this plate last week. So this was the test print that I did. This was the one where I thought it was a little bit pale, so that was that one. And then that was the second print that I ran, which was the one that I thought was a bit fuzzy and a little bit dark. And then this was the one that I ran last week live in front of all of you, where it was the Goldilocks and it was just right. So we had this one that was a bit too pale, this one which was a bit too scuffy and dark, and then this one which was just right. And I promised you, didn't I, that I would go back and I would do some embellishing on it. Now, I've thought long and hard about this. I don't just sort of throw these things together, you know. I know it might seem it sometimes. But I've been thinking about how to embellish this, because there are some considerations to be made. I didn't really want to paint back over it or go back in with whatever material I fancied and obliterate everything that I'd worked so hard to achieve. So in other words, I didn't want it to stop looking like a printed plate. It would be very tempting to go back in, tidy it all up, neaten it all up, and lose that kind of print aesthetic, that feel of the immediacy of printmaking. So if I wanted to add a little bit of colour this, it needed to be kind of fleeting. Also, my other consideration was that I printed, if you remember, onto cartridge paper. Admittedly, it's very good cartridge paper, so this is 220 gram, but it isn't really designed to take any sort of paint or water. It's brilliant for printmaking, brilliant for dry media, but not so great for the paint, so I didn't want to overdo it. Now, as you can see, they have a slight buckle in them, but I was pretty good. When they came out of the press and they were still damp, I put them under a couple of books just to flatten them out. Had a little bit of kitchen roll on top as well, and they've come out pretty flat, but I don't want to push my luck with that. So I've got to think very carefully indeed about how I embellish and what I embellish it with. Now, here's where my thought process went, okay? I want to give our dodgy a sort of a little bit of a background. So the only way that I know how to do that effectively is with watercolour, but I need to do it quite carefully. Just a sort of nothing, vignette-y kind of background. But I knew as well that if I carried on with watercolour, I would be seriously pushing my luck in terms of the paper and the surface and the integrity and all of those kind of things. So I have decided to use watercolor pencils. I thought it would be quite interesting to see how these reacted with Dodge. I'm only going to give her a little bit of colour. I'm not going to overdo it whatsoever, but I thought then it would be a kind of a nice kind of gentle colour that isn't going to wipe out everything that I've done in terms of the printmaking. Now, these are the Faber-Castell watercolour pencils. They are one of the watercolour pencils that I really enjoy using. If you would like the easy link to them, you can find that over on the Technique Tuesday blog, which will have gone live about 12 minutes ago. That is on the Learning to Paint website, so that's www.learningtopaint.co.uk. Go to the resources part of the menu and you will see Technique Tuesday there. It will take you straight to the blog. So I'm going to use those too. And then I have a couple of other things around just in case I want to add anything to them, but that's where I'm going to start. Now I'm going to give our dodgy a little bit of a kind of nice fresh spring-like background. This is the reference photo that I took originally, which I grant you has green in the background, but I want Dodge to really, really stand out. So I was looking at the orange of her feathers on her front, and I thought actually that would be quite interesting to be backed with blue. So this is a cobalt blue watercolour. Now, it would be remiss of me, would it not, to remind you that there is a new brand of watercolour paints on the market. It just so happens to have my name across it, and it just so happens to occur in cobalt blue. So that is the one that I'm going to use. I've squeezed it out ready into a pan. That is the consistency of watercolour that I particularly enjoy using. I'm going to take my wet brush to, I'm not even going to bother spraying it today. I don't need masses of colour, I just need to give it a nod. Now you might be wondering how my soy-based printing inks are going to fare against me washing back over the top of them. And the honest answer is I'm not entirely 100% sure, but I have a pretty good idea. And I have a pretty good idea that they are going to dry relatively, that it will have dried, sorry, relatively waterproof. So I'm pretty sure I can wash things back over the top as long as I'm careful and I don't scrub away at the surface, and then we should be okay, shouldn't we? So I've got one of my imitation sable brushes here. This is a size 8. These are the SAA's imitation sable brushes. If you follow my work a lot, you will know they are my favourite brush to use. And I'm going to work a little negatively. So I'm going to take some of the watercolour. It's quite wishy-washy. I'm not really making any huge statement with it at all. All I'm going to do is to just give her an element of colour. So let's work back in amongst those buds and around the top of her head. We're using a blended out vignette kind of style of working so that I get a nice soft edge, but can you see how we're still retaining the integrity of that print? Now the cartridge paper is not liking the watercolour an awful lot, so I'm not touching it any more than I need to. I'm being quite light with my brush strokes. If you think about it logically, this poor piece of paper has really been literally through the ringer, been asked an awful lot of it. If I then go, oh, do you mind if I scrub away at your surface? It's going to go, oh, I'm sorry, no, that's not a thing. So I'm being very light and touching it very, very lightly indeed, and using a bit of water to blend out at the edges. Now, just to make sure that I don't get any hard lines, here's where your watercolour skills can come into play. All skills to do with painting I find are very, very transferable. So just because we're not particularly doing a watercolour or not working on watercolour paper, that doesn't mean that those skills that you have already acquired are lost. So there you go, a really kind of a very general watercolour wash. Let's see what it looks like in the close-up camera. You can see it there, kind of muted, but I haven't lost that kind of mark making, sense of immediacy, those kind of things that I really strive to achieve in my print. So I'm going to give that a very, very quick blast with the heat gun. I've got to be careful with the heat gun because this is not a piece of paper that likes heat in any way, so I'm just going to kind of show it the heat gun. And while I'm doing that, I can take the opportunity just to catch up on any of the live comments that are coming in. So I can see Linda D is on a road trip and that she might have to check in later. Go and enjoy yourself, Linda. Why would you not enjoy it? Thea, good morning, everyone. I'm a little late this morning. Thea, please don't apologise. You're always welcome, no matter what time you rock up. And what's Ali D saying? She's saying, I'm simultaneously working on a pen and wash piece using watercolour pencils. Well, isn't that fortuitous? I'm obviously channeling you this morning. So I'll give that a bit of a waft of a dry, and then I'm going to dry the back of it as well. Can you see that recess where the plate pushed into the surface of the paper? Let's give that a bit of a dry too. Ooh, it's buckling a bit. It's buckling a little bit. And Simone, good morning. Lovely to have you here. Now, whilst that cools down, I'm going to hold that in place just to see if I can get some of the kink out of it. I can, like, you probably see me do this a lot in some of my watercolour demonstrations where I weave the paper backwards and forwards to try to put the fibres back into place. It doesn't work so well with cartridge paper, but it's not too shabby. There we go. I haven't really lost, it's got a bit of it, let's show you, it's got a bit of a wrinkle in it, look. You can see that it's got a bit of a wrinkle. But if this turns into something that I might mount and frame, my mount is probably going to go up to that part anyway, isn't it? So we'll be okay. Right, let's get those watercolour pencils into play, shall we? And whilst I do that, you can have a look at Dodge in all her glory, and you can see some of the colours that I might consider using. Now, I haven't got the brightest of oranges in my watercolour pencils, it has to be said. But again, I might think of a different way of doing that. So I'm looking at those greys, a few of the kind of grey browns, that type of thing. Not overdoing it. I think that's going to be the watchword of today. Don't overdo it, Ali. So I've got three colours here. I've got a kind of, I was going to say a browny grey, but I could actually just read you the names out, couldn't I? Dark sepia, so browny grey, and then this one, which is called Grey 3, and this one, which is called Sanguine. And that's where I'm going to start. So let's have a look at Dodge again, so I can tell exactly where I need my oranges. That's pretty good. Mick has just asked a very interesting question. Can you iron wrinkled paper to flatten it? Mick, yes you can. This was a very interesting conversation that actually went on. I can't remember if it was on the Learning to Paint page or if it was on one of my other social media pages. If you took part in that conversation, then do see if you can tag Mick in it. But yes, we were talking at length about ironing paper. And the upshot of it is that, yes, of course you can iron a piece of paper, but it sort of depends. I think what my recommendation would be that you take a scrap of that paper and check to see if it can be ironed first. and then before you you go at it. That is my watchword, I think, just because you don't want to overdo it. And if your iron is a steam iron, then you probably need to put something over the top of it, maybe from the back, all of that kind of stuff. But testing, I think, is our watchword. So I've put a little bit of that sanguine down, and I've got a slightly smaller brush now. I've got a size 4 brush, which I'm going to take the majority of the moisture off my brush so that my brush is damp as opposed to being wet. And then I can use that brush to smudge some of the colour around. Now, is it as bright as the photograph? No, it's not, but neither is she. So again, I don't want to overpower all of that mark making that took me so long to get done. If I went for a ridiculously bright orange, then you'd be looking at the orange and not at the bird. So we're just we're touching it up really. Let's just remind you of that. Probably goes down a little bit further, Ali. I've been a bit careful with that, but that's the joy of watercolor pencils. I can go back in. They don't particularly like being worked into damp paper if you want soft edges. If you want a really hard line with a watercolor pencil, then yes, absolutely, work back into a damp surface. But if you want this kind of soft blended colour, you need to be a little bit more careful with it. That's all good, so I'm quite pleased with that. Again, kind of retaining this integrity. Let's go for our greys. Let's have a really good look at where these greys are. So we've got grey next to the orange. That's kind of what gives her that lovely fluffy appearance, and a little bit on the top of the head as well. So we can go straight in with that. So this is the cold grey. So I'm going to add a little bit of it. I have a feeling this might extend some of the marks that I made a little more, which I'm excited about because it will kind of soften them. So let's pop that in on there. Let's pop a little bit down here. So we're just sort of tinting it. I think I've probably said that more than once this morning, but that is what we're after. We're just after that kind of little element of colour. So you're not entirely sure where it came from, where you're looking at it. It doesn't overpower it. It's in keeping with the kind of aesthetic and the quality of our print, but it's giving her just that little touch of colour to bring her to life. I'm going to give that a bit of a blast with a heat gun. Now, Rosie has made a very good point where she's put, difficult to iron a print as you don't want to lose the indentation of the plate. Rosie, I think that is comment of the day, because yes, you're absolutely right. If you like that kind of recess that the printing plate has produced, and let's just flip that over on the back so you can see it just there in that raking light from the camera. If you don't want to lose that, then yes, you'd probably iron it out. But I think for other things such as watercolours and the like, I think you'd be fine. So got that grey on. Let's go back to having a look at Dodge, and we can see that we've got that sort of browny grey coming over the back. I think I probably need a brown as well as the grey. Okay, so a little bit of darkness up and around in here. Give her that kind of three-dimensional quality. Bringing some of that around, a little bit around on one side of the face too. And then some of that deep colour down her wing, that wing that helped her to balance, and a little bit in the tail. Let's switch to the richer brown. The brown that I went for is Caput Mortem Violet. So we'll add that little flash of colour in there. Maybe a little bit around this edge, and some more down in her wing. I am so mindful of not overdoing it. If you are one of life's serial faffers, you're going to find this a right old challenge to not overdo it, because the words will go through your head. Shall I just put some brown on there? Shall I just make this a little bit darker? Shall I just neaten and tidy that up a bit? And the answer is probably no. No, you shouldn't, because this is so important that this remains looking like a plate, that we don't want to overdo it. Now I'm just going to see if I can reach up and zoom in with my camera a little bit. Yes, I can. Look at that. Let's get into the detail. That's better. Now we can kind of see her in all her glory. So that blue is doing a really good job of kind of backlighting her. Yes, her eyes could probably be deeper and darker, but she's a print. She's an embellished print, so I don't want to overdo it. What I'm going to do, just to finish off, is to grab a couple of greens to add some colour to the branch that she's sitting on, and then I think she's done. Now, what greens am I going for? I'm going for earth green and chromium green opaque. Can you see those there? Just try and get those in the camera. Let's have a look at her again. That kind of that sort of matte gloss, kind of almost lichen fungi, kind of like where the tree has wintered and you've got those new branches coming through. So I'm just after putting a little bit of green in it, and then I've got to leave it alone. Easier said than done. Let's use some of that green on the buds. I can feel under my pencil that the paper, where it's kind of been pulled and pressed and messed about with, it's not liking me an awful lot. So I'm not going to overdo it. I'm going to put some of the green into where that kind of bracelet shading for the lines in there. Let's put a little bit of it underneath in there, and then we'll go in with a slightly darker colour just to give her a bit of shadow. Now, what's Simone saying? Simone is saying that looks beautiful already. Oh, thank you, lovely. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you very much. And Maureen is saying that it is subtle colour. Yes, just a kind of a nod to a bit of colour. There are ways that you can do this in printmaking. I could have done her with a bit of collagraph. I could have done all sorts of things with her, but this was an experiment to see how my printing press, created by my astonishingly clever husband, was going to work. Obviously, it's been very successful, and you've been able to have a little bit of an insight into how printmaking works, just in case you fancy having a go at it. And this is kind of my job, isn't it? To see how things pan out, to test out materials, and then it gives you the information or a little bit of confidence to be able to go and try these things out yourself. I sort of see it as my job. Chief tester, I think that's what my job is. And we will smudge some of that colour. Actually, do you know what? That green has kind of brought it together, hasn't it? It's kind of finished it off. Now, I did have some metallics out on my desk. I did have all sorts of things ready here to use on her. But do you know what? I think they're all going to be too much. I think I'm pretty happy with it as it is. That little flash of colour, that little bit of subtlety. Should we look at it in the close-up camera? There we go. That's kind of, that camera is a little bit closer to the actual colour that I'm achieving. The overhead one is a little bit on the dull side, but you can see we've got that kind of flash of orange, the greys and the browns, little bit of green in there to complete our piece and to give her that flash of colour, but not take away from all of those marks that I made. The plate, where's my plate gone? So here was that plate, obviously it's just that way round. All of those scratches that I made, the tools that we tested, and of course now I have that plate. I could reproduce her again and again and again. So if you wanted to test out a variety of materials, say this is a bit too subtle for you, and you're thinking, oh, do you know what, Ali, I could do something bolder than that, then you could run different prints, couldn't you? It might be that on this one, which was the first one that I ran, which was the pale version, I need something more subtle. But look, we did this really dark one, and I'm not so sure that that colour combination would work on something like this. Perhaps that needs something a little bit bolder, maybe some gouache or some acrylic inks or something like that. But if you run several versions of the same print, it gives you absolute carte blanche, doesn't it, to be able to experiment. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, really. If you like to revisit the same thing again and again and again, which an awful lot of artists do, they like to revisit things in series, then you can run different styles of print. You can make more than one copy, and then you can test various theories out. There is nothing to say, of course, that you couldn't purchase a white printing ink and then try printing this on black cartridge paper. There's so many variations, and because you've got this plate, because you put so much time and effort into this plate, you can run it again and again and again and again. Now if you have a metal plate, it won't start to degrade for quite a while. Plastic plates, after a while, with you kind of scrubbing the surface and all of those kind of things, they do start to degrade, which is why you get editioned prints. So you'll get prints that are numbered. So what tends to be a lower number tends to be quite a fresh, sharp variation of it. And then later down the line in the editioning where you get higher numbers, sometimes you lose some of the detail, but also sometimes they can really kind of gravitate towards losing some of the detail. Just depends on the subject matter. But I do hope that gives you an overview of printmaking, gives you a few ideas of how you can experiment. Now, Janet, oh, good morning, Janet, lovely to have you here. Thea is saying flash of colour has brought it to life beautifully. Thea, thank you very much. Now, Trudy's made a really interesting observation, which I like, and perhaps because I'm channeling at the moment. Trudy is saying, looks a very vintage effect. Now, I've been working on a whole series of things, which I can't show you at the moment, trying to get that vintage effect. And isn't that funny? Perhaps I have literally been in that mindset of just kind of channeling something to make it look slightly aged. Now, let's get you back so I can see you all again. Woo! Rabina is very kindly saying that she really enjoyed this project and thank you and enjoy your break. Yes, I am off on holiday. As of this Friday, I am disappearing for 10 days. There'll be people lurking in the background. The admin, the lovely Dee, is doing me the world's biggest favour. Not only is she admin for the Learning to Paint Facebook page, but she's house sitting for me as well. Isn't she marvellous? And we'll get the cheeky catch up in there somewhere too. And then yes, I'm disappearing off to Wales with my family for a break, and I will be back all guns blazing, ready for Dorset Art Weeks. And then as soon as Dorset Art Weeks is all set into motion, then I have some extremely exciting news. The relaunch of the All Aboard Artists, making it absolutely accessible to everyone, no matter what your budget, no matter what it is you're after in tuition. But I can't tell you anything more about that right yet, because it is time for a little break for Technique Tuesday. I will be back on the 3rd of May at 9 AM UK time. Don't forget, I will try to remember to remind you. If for any reason at all you want to know where I am and what I'm doing, just pop over to the calendar of events on the Learning to Paint website and it'll all be there for you, I promise. So until I see you either online or in person, you take lots and lots and lots of care of yourselves, won't you? I'm looking forward to my holiday. My dogs are looking forward to my holiday. My husband even more so. I hope you get a good break over Easter, no matter how you acknowledge that holiday. Take care and I will see you very soon. Bye, lovely people. Bye.